Now, we begin with new calls for accountability over the latest bombshell on the origins of COVID-19. The Wall Street Journal now reports that the Energy Department believes the pandemic likely resulted from a laboratory leak in Wuhan, China. That's according to classified intelligence recently provided to the White House and members of Congress. The Energy Department now joins the FBI in saying the virus likely spread from a mishap at a Chinese lab. But you'll remember, the lab leak theory was widely dismissed by the media as debunked conspiracy theories. So we'll proceed now, Guy. As Jonathan Turley points out, for years, the media and government allied to treat anyone raising a lab theory as one of three possibilities. He writes, conspiracy theorist or racist conspiracy theorist. He's absolutely right.
Well, and remember, for a while there at the beginning, it was also racist to suggest that this came from a wet market. So you couldn't really talk about how this virus originated at all from the perspective of these gatekeepers. And I just keep coming back to the term misinformation and conspiracy theory. This type of verbiage is used to disqualify viewpoints that the media and others disagree with. And over again, they're proven wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't things such as destructive disinformation or misinformation or conspiracy theories. We should combat those. Our job should be telling the truth. But when you tell the American people that things are false and it's misinformation to make those claims, and in fact censoring people, turning them into pariahs for saying these things, your credibility's shot at that point when they turn out to be correct. And I would just say, if you were saying it's completely unacceptable to even float the lab leak theory, or to say that natural immunity matters when it comes to COVID policy, or to defend all the way to the bitter end mask mandates, or to say, for example, that a certain laptop was Russian disinformation. If you've been part of that crew, I would submit that it's time to take a temporary or perhaps permanent time out from lecturing the rest of us about truth, because your credibility's shot.
And that's the point, Harris, you covered it so thoughtfully last hour, that those who even dared to raise the questions were censored, were stricken, were canceled, were disqualified, were shamed publicly, were humiliated, lowered in stature professionally. We saw the absolute wake of destruction that even daring to ask questions brought.
Well, daring to ask questions, they were doing babysitting. They were just tasked with babysitting us. And while this administration tried to figure out where it really stood with China, and look at where we are now. We don't stand next to China. We're in a we're on our knees. I mean, think about that for a second. They flew a spy craft across our country, and this president waited for it to get to the other shore. We now know how many days before it actually reached the first shore on the left coast. They had time. And now they've been shooting stuff down. They won't tell us what it is, just willy-nilly, because it's in order to protect us. What are they protecting us from? Can they just tell us something? This is where we are. China. China, we're coupled with them for our pharmaceuticals. We can't get enough of this drug. We can't get enough of that drug. We're coupled with them on this COVID disaster. They had their people totally locked down. It was because of our media coverage as Americans saying, look at those poor people in China. You should let them free, and putting pressure on. We were part of that, part of the answer. But they don't trust us with answers. They're babysitting us, and we're not children. And when I was stickered on Twitter, I'm sure you were too. I mean, those of us who were suspended or censored or whatever the case was, we all saw this happening to each other, and we all knew that the reason was because we wanted answers. I have something right now on my Instagram feed with that sticker on there. There's no mention of a vaccine or anything in there. They just don't like it. They don't like that I ask questions about anything, apparently. So boom. I don't think that Elon Musk can buy them all, though. But we could wait.
Let's dig a little deeper and show a trip down memory lane with how the media covered this.
A conspiracy theory going around that the coronavirus originated and was perhaps man-made inside a lab in China.
And then there's this theory, widely debunked. This paper from 2 Chinese researchers that says it is plausible that the virus leaked accidentally from one of 2 labs near the Wuhan seafood market.
This question about the Wuhan lab, we know that it's been debunked that this virus was man-made or modified or anything like that.
Just weeks ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China. And yet this week, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum.
A lot of people on the right love that phrase, escape from the lab, because it sounds like something from a Marvel movie or a comic book. Both scientists and the U.S. intelligence community agree that this coronavirus was not man-made. That is not a possibility.
There is also no reason to believe any of these conspiracy theories that it was leaked from the lab in Wuhan, whether intentionally or otherwise.
It's shameful, Tammy, especially in context now of, as Guy pointed out, so much of that becoming or being confirmed that it was true. And again, just the fact that the inverse wasn't proven to be true.
Right.
So in the absence of any facts, as people were daring to ask questions, especially in the landscape of grants to the Wuhan lab and grants by China to American universities and things that did obviate the need to ask questions, this was what we got.
Yes, and that's an excellent point, and I think one of the most important points in where this will land with the American people. That uniformity takes time and effort. They weren't just all coming to this point of it's debunked and it's a conspiracy theory. You heard the same thing over multiple platforms, when now we know they didn't even know. So the choice was not to say, we don't know, don't jump to conclusions, we're working on this. It was a completely constructed fake front, which will and has been concerning the American people. We've known basic common sense. We do always want evidence. The evidence now is coming through. But the fact is, now we realize that someone within a major kind of combination of a collusion, as we've now seen between government and media, created this false front to effectively gaslight the American people. Why would you do that when ultimately 1 million Americans are dead? What is the question has to be, and I hope the Republicans get to it, the question has to be, in whose interest was this?
Yeah.
With the money, I know we were funding things. Fauci's got some things to answer. This is beyond just because we're curious. This was a construction of something specific. And it was more, I would argue, yes, it was babysitting, but it was also a training. It was a training for us to just take at face value what the government was saying and to change our lives, which we still feel to this day. Kids out of control, sobriety ruined, Americans not wanting to go into work, Americans still afraid, the media still trying to do that. It was a training of the media. It was a training of us. They are failing. They're going to continue to fail. But this shows you exactly how deep it was and how nefarious it was as well.
And Lisa, in typical kindling fashion, of course, academia piled on, calling it toxic white masculinity to even dare to raise these questions, as well as anti-Chinese racism. And remember, Tammy brought up the administration and the government impact with it. And of course, then President Biden sort of squashed any investigation into the origins. But when he revived it, even he was said to be sugarcoating Trump's racism. No one was spared the crosshairs from the racist broad brush of daring to ask questions into the origins of what killed over 1 million Americans.
Well, because it was a cover-up. I mean, we know that Anthony Fauci and our own government were funding gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where the outbreak took place, and now they're just coming to the conclusion that it came from there. I mean, duh. It's been the most obvious answer all along, but it was a cover-up because of our part, particularly Dr. Anthony Fauci. And you can go back and look at the fact that he colluded with Dr. Francis Collins, along with scientists, to try to shut down anyone who dare raise the most obvious answer, which was that it came from the lab. We know that he also worked with social media to try to shut down people questioning that as well. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about COVID this entire time, is it's just been a denial of common sense. It's just been a simple denial of common sense. And Guy was talking about people who are treated like social pariahs who raise questions. I was one of those people from the beginning on everything. I questioned the lethality of COVID from the beginning, questioned lockdowns from the beginning, questioned the origins of the coronavirus from the beginning, questioned the efficacy of vaccines from the beginning, because I was actually looking at the data and talking to people that weren't necessarily the ones on TV. There were people like Dr. John Ioannidis, who wrote an op-ed in March of 2020 saying that it's not as deadly as everyone is saying it is, and that we're basically making all these terrible data decisions off of bad data. And he was right from the beginning. There were people, he's a Stanford epidemiologist. He's world-renowned for debunking bad research. But where was he in the beginning of this? People weren't interested in talking to him. So, this entire time, we've just seen a denial of the obvious, a denial of common sense. And in the end, the American people suffered. They suffered so much. They've lost businesses. They've lost lives. People were fired for not wanting to get the vaccine. I mean, we need accountability. People need to be punished. People like Dr. Fauci need to be punished.
The million to COVID, then the excess deaths. We don't even know what those numbers are quite yet.
Well, what about the nursing home debacle?
Oh, my God.
I mean, there's so many things that we could dig into.
Yeah.
I do want to say this, and I did 11 pandemic specials on this network. We had every kind of scientist. I wasn't just asking questions, and I love the way Lisa put that. We had data. We had a reason to believe that that lab was a problem. When our own Dr. Siegel went to the biocontainment place in Nebraska where we first had it, he talked about what it would take to get this into the bloodstream of the world from a place that it would be hard to do anything with zero vacuum. I mean, zero, it has the ability to just suck everything in and not spit anything out, that biocontainment lab. He said, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a situation that was corrupted by accident, whatever it was. He said that very early on, and we talked about that. And I mean, people didn't want us to have the conversation. And look, I again say, look at where we are now.
Can I just raise real quick one more thing? If you go back and there is evidence that the coronavirus came about potentially, fall of 2019, even earlier than that.
Yes.
So what was the point of lockdowns in March of 2020? I mean, you look at how transmissible this virus was. Look at how widespread it had been at that point, but we didn't do the antibody testing. We didn't do the due diligence to figure out how widespread it had been at that point. So there's no point of lockdowns even from the beginning. So all of this, a denial of, common sense, truth, and even desiring to get to the bottom of it, with the exception of people like Harris and a lot of people at this network.
Most disturbing to me is that we were actually put on notice over a year prior to the leak, when American delegates that looked into the lab raised non-classified telecommunications to the intelligence agency and to the administration, saying this lab is not safe and here is why.
Yes.
With detailed explanations about their security concerns, given the gain-of-function research, given the absolute incendiary nature of what was in there. We were put on notice. This administration turned a blind eye to it, and at the result of millions of deaths. So much more to come. We will stay on this as it unfolds. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.